past July, I preached a sermon reflecting on the 100th anniversary of the beginning of World War I. As a point of connection, it seemed appropriate to name that this evening is the 100th anniversary of the famous Christmas Truce. December 24th, 1914 was a clear, cold night on that Germany-Belgium border. The shooting had stopped, and in the silence, Walter Kirchhoff, a German soldier who in peacetime had been a tenor in the Belgian opera, the Berlin Opera, began singing Silent Night in German. His strong voice carried the tune across the no man's land between the two opposing armies. After finishing the verses in German, he then sang it in English. Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright. Sleep in heavenly peace. The British soldiers, no doubt also missing their loved ones, just as the German soldiers were, missing being home for the holidays with their families. They slowly began to join in singing as well. And slowly the soldiers also began taking the risk of emerging from their trenches to fraternize, to drink, and even, the stories go, to play some friendly games of soccer, or as they would have said, football. Soldiers rode home the day after to their families, to their wives, to their parents. You won't believe this. It was like a waking dream. They recognized that on both sides of the rifle, they were ultimately the same. Taking a wider view, historians tell us that it's no coincidence that the Christmas Truce, the only one of World War I, happened within the first few months of that 4-year war. The longer the battle continued, the more entrenched and the more jaded the soldiers became, making events like the Christmas Truce increasingly improbable. That being said, I don't want to underemphasize the significance that historic Christmas Truce 100 years ago tonight happened after months of warfare with heavy casualties on both sides. The singing of Silent Night was completely spontaneous and unplanned, and it might not have worked if that person singing hadn't been able to sing it in both German and English. It might not have worked if the person singing didn't have a strong, resonant voice. It might not have worked if someone had betrayed that possible openness and peace and vulnerability with breaking a ceasefire, if they had opened fire and violated the potential trust. These soldiers were caught in a broken system. Many historians look back on World War I as about narrow national rivalries and selfish imperial interests. Indeed, Harry Patch, the last soldier to have actually fought in the trenches of World War I, he died in 2009 at the age of 111. He said, two civilized nations, British and German, fighting for our lives. What we fought for even all these years later, I don't know. The politicians who took us to war should have been given guns and told to settle their differences themselves. But even in the midst of this broken system, when an opening of potential transformation presented itself, the timing of Christmas Eve, on a cold, silent night when the gunfire had temporarily ceased, one soldier was courageous enough to risk raising his voice, and other soldiers took the risk of joining in on both sides. Even in the most entrenched and embattled relationships and conflicts, whether global or interpersonal. We are in the midst of, many of us will be going home for the holidays, and as the saying goes, our families can sometimes push our buttons more than anyone else because our families are the ones that sewed on our buttons in the first place. So we can relate to this moment maybe now as much or more than other times of year. So in the midst of these, even the most entrenched and embattled global or interpersonal conflict, openings of potential transformation still come. So this Christmas, what new hope might you birth into this world that might disrupt what has become a settled status quo? What first step might you take toward peace and reconciliation? What unanticipated act of simple kindness and compassion might you extend? What joy might you allow to emerge unexpectedly in your heart? For now, I'll close with these words from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. from his 1967 A Christmas Sermon for Peace. Dr. King said, "If we are to have any hope of peace on earth, our loyalties must become more ecumenical than sectional. Our loyalties must transcend our race, our tribe, our class, our nation. And this must mean developing a world perspective. And we must either learn to live together as brothers and sisters, or we will perish together as fools. All life is interrelated. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly." So in that spirit of hope for love and joy and transformation of conflict, you can remain seated as we sing together hymn 246.